Inside Albany is made possible by a grant from the Savings Banks Association of New York State.
It was billed as a chance for people to show that they love New York, and it drew thousands of them to an extraordinary day-long festival at Albany's Empire State Plaza.
It was, in fact, New York's first fall festival, a giant display of state crafts, musicians, food, beverages, and artwork that covered both the surface and the concourse levels of the 95-acre government complex.
In the course of the 13-hour event, New Yorkers ate New York cheese, drank New York wine and beer, watched New York artisans practice their crafts on wood, pewter, pottery, and glass, and they applauded an array of entertainment ranging from an African dance troupe to the Lake George Opera.
Some people said it cost too much and that it was merely a campaign kickoff for you, Carey, but the crowd who braved cloudy 40-degree weather didn't seem to care.
Hugh Carey himself was in high spirits as he opened the festivities with Lieutenant Governor Mary Ann Krupsack and co-host Kitty Carlisle Hart at his side.
Whatever you're seeking in the way of entertainment and recreation, we have it here in Albany today, in the state's capital, on the 200th anniversary of the great state of New York. So join me, if you will, Mr. Bear, Kitty, Mary Ann Krupsack, Lieutenant Governor. We all say together, I love New York.
That's how the festival began at 10:30 in the morning, as the artisans and craftsmen were still putting finishing touches on their booths, and as the first few hundred people began streaming across the plaza.
And thousands are expected to sample a whole variety of New York foods, perhaps buy the works of the artisans and craftsmen, and be entertained by everything from Dixieland to the Rochester Philharmonic.
We're off to do some sampling ourselves, and we'll bring you along with us.
There was music all day, everywhere, and one of the groups, Shagbark Hickory, played some authentic bluegrass for the crowd.
Well, I can see why you think you belong to me. I never seem to let you think, oh, let you see one thing for yourself. But now you're off with someone else and I'm alone. When I thought that I might keep you for my own. Amy, what you ought to do, I think I could stay with you for a while, maybe longer if I did. Well, don't you think time is right for us to find all the things that we thought were wrong but could be right at times? Can you see that the way we turn together or alone? Well, I'd never know what's right or what is wrong. Amy, what you want to do?
There are a whole variety of ethnic foods here to be sampled in Capitol Park, just next to the Empire State Plaza. And the first stop that we made was at the Chinese-American food represented here by Mr. E.U. Mr. Yu, tell me, the first thing I noticed, I see all the Chinese food here, but the first thing I noticed was chocolate chip cookies. How did they sneak in to this array here?
We think other people here like chocolate chip cookie, so we learned how to make it, but we improved it a bit.
How did you improve it?
That's my wife's recipe.
Well, I'll have to ask.
Some sugar or more chocolate chips and, you know.
Just put in more of everything.
Well, I think so. That's right.
What about some of the other things that I see here? Pumpkin balls. Could you tell me something about the recipe?
Oh, that's my. I made a pumpkin roll. This is just the Chinese style. Put pumpkins and the flowers, everything, and then fry them. Deep fry them. I noticed you have a lot of the foods that you're making here. The egg rolls are fried. Is that common? That's very common. Yeah, fried things is very common. Why is that? Oh, I think it tastes much better, crispier. Uh-huh. Yeah. How did the Chinese donuts? They're a little different here. What are they fried again, just like donuts you would get? Yes, we dip it in the eggs and roll with sesame seeds and then fry them, deep fry them too.
The interesting thing to me when I was talking to you before is that you don't represent, you're not from a Chinese restaurant or anything. You just decided to come here. How did you get involved in the festival?
We learned from the newspaper, radio, and we think will be a very good chance to introduce Chinese culture to the people here. So we tried this food.
I'm here with Jan Shore of Culinary, who's a puppet maker, a potterer, and an old friend, as it turns out. And we're here with some little friends of ours. How do you make these, Jan?
These are sock and rod puppets. The body is made with a sock, and the rods that are attached to move the arms are actually an ancient form of puppetry that was started in Asia centuries ago.
I find it I find it quite difficult. It's like working chopsticks to get the arms to go. Is that the idea?
It takes a little while to get the coordination. With children, I usually suggest they leave one rod down and then just work with a single rod. Actually, the children seem to get it faster than the adults.
How did you get from puppetry to pottery?
I had always been interested in puppetry as a child and started making puppets when I was in high school. And then in college I got into the pottery, and even though the pottery became my main craft, I could never leave doing puppets. I just have too much fun talking to the people at the festivals with the puppets and seeing their reaction to them.
And when I started out, I said, I've never interviewed a puppet before, and then I thought about some of the legislators and decided maybe I had. Thanks so much for talking with us. Hi, Dave.
We've seen the pizza that Rocky Discanio makes here with his family. We're going to take a look at some of the other Italian delicacies. And the first one, Rocky, is this dough here. I haven't seen this before. Is this new?
Well, it's not relatively new. It's been on the market for quite a few years. All it is water and flour and yeast. And,
and you put some, is that sugar on?
Well, we put confectionery sugar or cinnamon and sugar on after it's cooked, depending on your taste.
Isn't it a little heavy?
Well, they don't call it belly busters for nothing.
And it's fried, just fried pizza dough.
Fried dough, right.
What else do you have? Run me down the line here. What else you have?
Homemade sausage and peppers and onions, which is going over pretty good.
And you have, what's down in the end?
We have minestrone soup down in the end. It's kind of a cool day, and it seems to be moving pretty good, you know.
What's in minestrone? Can you just throw anything at all in there, or is it any kind of? Because I've had some minestrone that has just about anything in it.
Well, it's mostly Italian spices and zucchini and what they call chigod.
What's that?
It's like Italian lettuce, only it's what we call chigod. And you could throw vegetables in it, and macaroni. Cannelli beans and kidney beans. Really, there's a lot of
hearty soup.
It's a body soup, really a hearty body soup. You know.
Now this is a family operation, but I don't see your wife here. Where's
my wife? Unfortunately, she can't work right now. She's not feeling too good. We're expecting our 6th child.
Well, congratulations. I'll have a
Thank
little
you.
fried dough and bust my belly. Thanks a lot. Lean down here and get one of these belly busters. Over to you, Peg.
I'm in the crafts exhibit area with Joanne Sauer, one of the few pewtersmiths in the country, let alone in New York State. How did you decide to work in pewter?
Well, I like the material, and I like to combine two materials, wood and pewter. I enjoy the touch of the metal and the way I can form it and shape it, because it is very malleable.
And you're self-taught, too.
That's right. I am self-taught because I couldn't find anybody at the time when I started. I wanted to do it. So I went to the public library on 42nd Street in Manhattan and went home and experimented, and that's how I got to know it.
You've also taken a very traditional art style and made very modern pieces out of it. Why did you do that instead of a more traditional type of pewterware?
Well, I found it more interesting and very challenging because it is an old material, as you said. I enjoyed giving it my idea and my form, feeling for form, and this is how I came about it.
We're here at the home of the Bagel Baron, who has an operation here in Albany. Mark Perlson, tell me, is the Bagel Baron just Albany-based, or are you spread out?
Yes, we are, Dave. We're in Albany, and as you know, many bagel bakeries exist in New York City. We thought we'd come up to Albany and share our bagels with Albany and the community. We've done quite well. I think they've been accepted, and I'm very happy about that.
What's unique about a bagel?
Bagels are boiled first in water, and that's what gives them the texture. Dave, you want to hand me a bagel? Gives them the texture that they have and the uniqueness of a bagel, which differs it from any roll or any other kind of bread.
Some of the other things, I see a pizza bagel here. Now, I was already to an Italian booth. They're not selling bagels. How did you get into pizza bagels?
Okay, we've had a big request and a great demand for them in the store. And all it is that we cut our bagel in half, and we make pizza out of them. We use mozzarella cheese, and we make our own sauce. And it's been a great demand for it, and we enjoy making them. It's been a good experiment.
Now, when you talk about bagels, you have to talk about cream cheese, you have to talk about lox. What are lox?
Okay, lox is a smoked salmon type of fish that became very popular and go hand in hand with our bagels. And we make them in sandwiches with cream cheese, and we have also cream cheese and lox bread. And it just goes hand in hand with the bagel. And we've been very successful with that.
I'm going to run down your whole menu. Knishes. What's a knish?
Okay, potato knish is potatoes wrapped in dough, seasoned, and we make them homemade so that they're very unique to our place.
This sounds like Weight Watchers is not the Bagel Baron shouldn't serve us a Weight Watcher.
No, Weight Watchers cannot come to the Bagel Baron. However, we do make salad plates.
Let me ask you about the final thing on your menu there. Pronounce it for me. Hamantaschen? What is it?
Right. Hamantaschen. That's it's a kind of bakery good that is connected with the Jewish holiday of Purim, and we're selling them out today, even though it's not Purim, because it's a very popular item, and we feel that we make them well. And
how does it differ from just a Danish?
Well, it's a different kind of dough. It's a different kind of dough. Danish is soft. They're hard. It's more of a cookie, and we use fruit to fill it up, and it's more of a cookie than it is a cake.
How's business?
Business is doing well despite the weather, and we're hoping for some sunshine here.
Can you load me up with some lox and cream cheese and a bagel?
Okay.
Let me sample. Okay, we'll try this. I'm game. Nova Scotia, you say?
Nova Scotia.
It's delicious.
Thank you, Dave.
Now we're going to see what Peg is doing.
A lot of old Albany faces in the crowd here today, among them Peter Goldmark, the former state budget director and now the executive director of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. He's here with an assorted crew of family and friends. What's it like to be back, Peter?
It's a great deal of fun. I gather I'm now known around here mostly for my aviation feats.
We won't be serious today. We'll let you off the hook. Who do we have here with us?
Lisa. Karen.
I don't think we can hear you.
A little louder.
Karen.
Karen, okay.
Kelly. Jennifer. Ann. Laura.
I don't think she's speaking yet, yes.
You wouldn't say hello to the governor. The governor came over and said, "How are you?" and she looked away like that.
How do you like the exhibits and the crowds? Are you having a good time?
Yep.
Have you seen anything you really like yet?
What about the cow? Yeah, they were all petting. Do you know the cow and the calf that are over there?
I missed the cow.
You ought to get to see the cow, Peg, if you do anything today.
There's a baby one too.
A baby cow?
Yeah.
This cow, was imported from the Metropolitan Museum in New York for this show.
Especially, they've never let it out before. I know. What are you going to do now?
I don't know.
Have a good time?
Yeah, maybe.
No. Straight.
That's right. We're all going to have a great time because this is a festival for New York State. And if you don't have a good time, I'm going to send Johnny Dyson to see you.
And you'll be fired. Good. Thanks for speaking with us. Enjoy yourselves.
The African American Cultural Center of Buffalo sent African drummers and dancers to the festival. All types of culture were found on the mall. Outdoors, there were music and dancing. Indoors, at the State Museum, was a unique exhibit of New York art, a huge collection conceived by art consultant Courtney Sale, showing the beauty of the state and the talents of its artists through 200 years of our history. There has never been an exhibit like this gathered together before.
Richard Meyer is the architect who designed the exhibition space. Mr. Meyer, how did you ever come up with all this?
Well, one's thinking about the problem of designing museums over a long period of time, and so having been given this assignment, I had a sense of what I wanted to do, and it was simply articulating that idea and executing it, which took almost 3.5 weeks.
What were the special problems involved, given the different types of exhibition and the space you had to work in?
Well, basically, what this is an enormous barn-like space without any redeeming qualities whatsoever. And the problem is to give this room, which has enormous scale, human scale.
And all the spaces you've designed will stay at the museum?
Yes. I think that the way in which the spaces have been designed, I could see all kinds of fantastic shows in these spaces. There could be shows of children's drawings, there could be photography shows, there could be sculpture shows. It can have a myriad of uses, and the reason is because it's almost like building a building within a building. It has doorways, it has windows, it has vistas, it has private places where 2 or 3 people feel comfortable in scale, and then open spaces where hundreds of people can congregate. It's like an attitude about the making of a segment of the city.
After talking with the architect, we had a chance to speak with the 3 curators of the exhibit, experts in folk art, the Hudson River School, and the New York School.
Dr. Robert Bishop is director of the American Folk Art Museum and is the curator of folk arts in New York State. Could you strike a theme for this exhibit? What does this mean for someone coming through? What is folk arts in New York?
Well, the folk arts in New York really end up being the kinds of things that were created by the common man and pretty much used by the common man. We're not looking at the material that the rich or the financially able were living with. We're looking at the things that were essentially handcrafted for home use.
Have you sectioned off, it's a great area. Have you sectioned off, I noticed you have furniture here and other places. How do you section off various places in the display?
Well, what we tried to do was show the various cultural inputs that come together to make the broad term folk art what it is. Here we're standing in front of Shaker furniture, and of course the Shaker culture was a very important part of New York State history. We have a section devoted to textiles, which focuses on quilts and coverlets. We have a section that features carousel carvings and cigar store figures, the kinds of things that were created in workshops in New York City. We have primitive paintings ranging from the early 1700s up through the 1890 or 1900 period. So this exhibition ends up being a real panorama of American history through the folk idiom.
Dr. William Gertz was the curator for the section on the Hudson River School. He's with the City University of New York. Dr. Gertz, briefly describe the Hudson River School for us.
Well, the Hudson River School was the first major native school of American painting and devoted to the glorification, really, of the American landscape. The painters of that school, who worked for about 50 or so years, did not paint just the Hudson River, but they concentrated on the Hudson and on the Catskills, sort of glorifying the beauty of the American landscape. Before then, the landscape represented something dangerous, the unknown. But when that danger receded, there was felt that America really represented almost a kind of a new Eden, second chance for man on earth. And that second chance was seen in the beauty of the American landscape. Since most of the landscape painters lived in New York or around New York, they tended to concentrate on the Hudson River in finding their subject matter. Most of it was quite realistic. Occasionally they ventured off into allegorical subjects, but even then it was based upon their study of the Catskill and Hudson River School scenery.
Thomas Hess is an art critic and art historian and curator of the New York School. Mr. Hess, For the uninitiated, what is the New York School?
Well, it's just a tag. It is no particular thing. It's like what is groceries, you know? It includes many kinds of art that emerged in Manhattan, in New York, around 1945, and is still continuing in many different forms.
For someone who is maybe is thinking about traditional art, Norman Rockwell art, that kind of thing, how should they approach this?
Well, they have to do a little homework. This is not the kind of art that gets out of its chair, reaches over and gives you a drink and shakes your hand. You've got to do a little background, read a little bit, and also keep your eyes open and your heart open and your mind open. It's apt to affront you if you come with a bunch of stereotypes saying, why don't you tell me a story, or why don't you make me feel happy?
On hand for the opening of the exhibit was the state's chief executive, and I asked the governor for his reaction to the show.
Well, it's all that I'd hoped it would be, and far more than I expected, frankly, because all those who worked hard putting this together, Gordon Umbach, our Superintendent of Education and Commissioner of Education, Courtney Sale and Kitty Carlisle Hart, and all those who worked with the Council on the Arts to make this possible. Esther Schwanker from the Chamber was sort of keeping this a secret from me because they said, don't get your hopes too high. But I think we have great loans from many of the great collections around the state. That's what I always hoped we could do, was to bring out from many of the museums and collections around the state many of the treasures that have been hidden from public view. Now they're here. So in this year of the great bicentennial of our state, this fall festival starts on a note of tremendous art exhibition, and I do hope everyone will come during the weeks ahead to see this great collection while it's here.
And what do you want the people to get out of the exhibit and the festival as they go through?
A sense of pride in our state, a sense that we have great creative artists in the state, and we have a capacity to rival anywhere in the world with the abilities that people will find in our state.
From the museum, we move back to music, a lively performance by the Mostly Mozart Trio. More and different music later, but first back to the Crafts Festival, where Peg had another distinguished guest.
I'm standing here with Elsie the cow, believe it or not, and I've just discovered something terrible. Elsie is an Ohio cow. She's not from New York. But we didn't let that stop the interview. And Sean McClellan is Elsie's trainer, and he's here with her, keeper. Sean, how did you pick Elsie?
Elsie's picked on her disposition mainly. She also has to be good looking, especially around the head, and you can see she's very lovable, and that's the reason we have her.
I'm certainly glad she's friendly. How long is Elsie going to be on the road?
She's on the road about 9 months out of the year. In the wintertime, she gets a break, about 3 months. So we'll go down south with her after this week, and we'll tour the southern states, and then we'll come back, and then she'll have 3 months off.
Yeah. What do you want Elsie to represent? What does she mean?
She's the dairy logo for Borden's, and we want her to represent, be kind and things like that, nice things in the world.
While I was busy with Elsie, Dave went fishing with the Department of Environmental Conservation.
I imagine as a veteran fisherman, you fished in other states as well as New York. What does New York have to attract a fisherman?
Well, of course, I'm prejudiced. Living and working in New York. No, I think, and I would guess that the data would substantiate it, that we have as much fishing as any other state in the country, and we probably have more variety than most other states in the country. And we can compete very successfully with Canada, for an example. All kinds of fishing, the panfish, right on up through the muskies. Of course, we hold the world's record in muskies, right up through various kinds of salmon, trout, bass, and you name it, we got it.
We've been talking to Mr. Bob Brewer, who was with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. Now we're going to check to see what Peg's doing.
Do you mind if I tell you that I grew up watching you on television and loved every minute?
Thank you. I guess you would say I played daddy to everybody just about in this country who is now 35 years or younger. Right.
Why are you now playing Albany? How'd you get involved in the festival?
Well, I owe New York, without that first trip to New York City in 1943, I think it would have been all over for me, because that's where my first big-time job in my whole life was La Martinique in New York. Scared to death, but they responded beautifully, and it was legendary that you don't make it the first time in New York. And it's also legendary, if you make it there, you can make it anywhere, which is in the song New York, New York, which I'm going to do tonight. And I owe the state, really. And of course, Governor Carey and Lee Goober and Kitty Carlisle are very dear friends, and they called and they said, please come. I guess I represent ethnic America, and New York, after all, was the first melting pot that this country is noted for. So that's probably the reason why they wanted me. I'm happy to come and say thank you.
We've been looking at crafts exhibits, and we've been looking at exhibits put together by New York State's agencies. We're now at one that crosses over into both areas. The Department of Mental Hygiene runs a program in the Capital District called the Eleanor Roosevelt Developmental Services. Gary Siegel is a volunteer coordinator in Rensselaer County. Gary, tell me something about the crafts exhibit here.
Well, what we have here is a representative sample crossing the 6 county lines that we serve under Eleanor Roosevelt, and also one that reflects the various private agencies that we also collaborate with, such as the ARC, the Association for Retarded Children, the various other private and county agencies that we serve.
All of the crafts that we see here were done by people with developmental disabilities or
mental retardation or developmental disabilities, yes.
And they cross all lines. We have woodworking, we have some knitting here, everything.
Right. Jewelry, knitting, woodworking.
Thank you, Ann Velliere and Gary Siegel of the Eleanor Roosevelt Developmental Services.
Back in the crafts area again with Flora Aiello, who heads a quilting group at her church, and she's an Albany resident. Flora, what's a bicentennial signature quilt?
Well, this is a quilt that we decided to do to celebrate the bicentennial year,
And we sent patches away to each of the people whose signatures are here. We tried.
Who are some of them?
Well, Nelson Rockefeller and Gerald Ford, Gerald Ford, of course, was president at the time. Rockefeller was vice president. We have, from the entertainment world, Bob Hope and Danny Thomas, who's going to be here today, Bing Crosby, Rose Kennedy. Of course, one of the most notable things right now is Elvis Presley. We did happen to get his signature. We were very fortunate. And we also have a duplicate of his signature. And the way that came about was that we, in order to be sure that we had room for any errors that might be made, we sent 2 patches to each of the people that we asked for their signatures and had them sign the 2 patches. So we have duplicates of most of the signatures, and we happen to have a duplicate of Elvis, which is a very nice thing right now. So we hope that someone will be interested enough in wanting it, and we framed it with the idea that they might want to buy it.
What made you and your friends form a quilting group?
We started out to do, well, we are still doing it for our church to raise money. Most of the quilts that we've done, we have raffled. This is the only one that we really haven't raffled. We felt that since it will be a collector's item, it really should be sold to someone who does appreciate its value.
Thank you. We've been speaking with Flora Aiello, an Albany quilt maker. Now back to Dave.
The Matt's Brewing Company has grown up with New York State, and we're here talking with one of the descendants of the original FX Matt, Kemper Matt. Mr. Matt, I said you did grow up with New York State, Matt's Brewery. How long have you been in existence in New York?
The brewery's been in existence since 1888. That was the time that my grandfather founded it. However, there was a brewery there in 1850, and we think there was a brewery there about 1823.
Why that particular site?
Well, there's a creek that runs right below the brewery. And in the old days, water was one of the most important things there was for beer. And you needed a great deal of water to make beer and to wash and so forth. And having the creek right there was a great advantage.
So you stayed in the same location, pretty much?
Stayed in the same location.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kemper Matt. It looks like Matt's Brewery has a future in New York State. After arts and crafts, cows and fish, we decided to return to the great outdoors, where the New Caledonia Pipe Band in kilts and full regalia played some striking Scottish marches, and where New York State wine and beer booths were pulling in the crowds. Damp weather couldn't dampen the enthusiasm of state beer drinkers.
If you like New York State wine, you'll also like New York State beer. And we're talking with Bill Bartizel at the Schlitz exhibition. He's from Amsterdam, New York. Bill, how's it going today? And is this really the right type of weather for a cold beer?
Well, it's going very well, but I think that maybe a month before this would have been a very fine time to do the whole thing. But I think they're going to come back again, and we're going to do a good job on it.
You're getting your... Are these for employees only, or are you hoping the crowd will go away with a nice yellow hat and shawl?
Well, Miss Marianne Krupsek has one. I think she appreciated it. With the cold weather, it does keep yourself warm.
What made you decide to come to this today?
We were asked to come to participate and to, help out the organization to have a fine day for the state of New York.
All right. What's the state of the beer industry in New York? Is it bubbling and thriving? Or?
Oh, the state, New York is one of the highest consuming beer per capita in the country, and it's very good.
Would you come back again to another one?
Yes, I would.
Good. Thanks for talking with us.
George Bavakis is from the Renaissance Restaurant, which is in downtown Albany. George, as you do this and as you fill some orders, could you describe what some of the foods you have?
Okay,
What's this right here?
This is shish kebab marinated beef in the Syrian bread.
What's the difference between that bread and just regular yeast bread?
Between that bread and
just regular bread.
Okay, that has different baking process, and also it's cooked round. And when you cut it open, it can be opened similar to a pocket. And you can put the contents inside.
What's this right in front of me here?
This is baklava. It's fine pastry with walnuts on the bottom with a honey sauce on top.
Very sweet.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. How about
then
this?
we have, these are grape leaves stuffed with rice and dill. And right over here on the other side of Tony here, we have spinach pie. It was made with spinach, feta cheese, and with a fine crust similar to this on top.
What's the taste of that? How would you describe that taste? Just
Well, spinach and cheese with a little lemony taste.
And that's grape leaves, you say?
Right.
Let me try one of those.
Sure.
What's in here?
Okay,
Grape leaves with what?
There's rice in there and dill.
Okay.
Robbie, can we get a coffee?
Very good. Thank you very much.
Okay.
The brisk fall weather produced some hearty appetites, and one of the favorite food booths was the Clam Bar. We're speaking with Paul Manning from Sayville, Long Island. Paul, how's business going, and is the weather hurting you at all?
Oh, we're doing very well. The weather's not bad. It's not as bad as we thought.
What made you decide to come up here today?
Well, we were called that you needed clams up here. We're having a fall festival. So right away we run right up and let the clams up.
What's the clamming season? How many months of the year can you take them?
It goes 12 months out of the year, but generally it's a summer job. It's where most of the money's made.
How do you tell if you have a clam in there or if you've got meat in there to sell?
If there wasn't a clam in here, the shell would be open. The clam keeps the shell shut. The muscles hold it together, hold it shut.
They're not alive now.
Yes, they are.
They are. So when you open that up and people eat them, they're eating live clams?
I don't know when they die. To tell you the truth, I don't know when. You know, how far down they die, I don't know.
Hopefully before they reach the bottom or something?
Maybe. Maybe they taste better, I don't know.
While Peg continued her lesson in elementary biology, it was time for more music, this time from the Wee Music Jazz Ensemble.
Come one, come all, this is the human puzzle. We're trying to put ourselves together. That's probably more than most of us can say when we get up in the morning. We're trying to put 76 people together in unison, all at one time. 76 people wearing human jigsaw puzzle pieces of foam rubber. The puzzle is a 40-foot diameter puzzle. The only clue to assembling it, and that is what makes it perhaps the world's hardest puzzle, is the edge and the shapes of the edge. The only way you can find out where you fit is if you talk to your neighbor, you ask one another, you check one another out, you see if you can figure out where you fit. Walk around, talk around, see if you can find someone that you fit into.
We're watching a troupe of dancers here. Could you tell me who they are and where these dances originate from?
This is Morris dancing. It's an ancient form of fertility dance from England. They've been doing it for thousands and thousands of years in England every springtime to make sure the crops grow, frighten evil spirits from the land in small, tiny villages in England. And as we say, they've been doing it each year, and spring has come each year, so it must be working. And this is we're a team from Poking Brook, New York, which is a tiny village in Dutchess County. These are the Poking Brook Morris dancers.
How long has this group been together?
For about 3 years.
And how long have you been a fool?
Oh, about 3. Well, somewhere between 23 and 3 years. I'm not sure exactly.
How do you? There's not much call for fools in occupation. How do you decide on being a fool?
Well, the fool is an important part of Morris dancing, and in England there are different characters. Teams have a hobby horse, and a fool is another character. who always goes along with the troupe when the dance tours in different towns.
Have you done much research yourself into the history of fools in England and how they function in, say, Shakespeare and things like that?
A bit. I was in England this summer watching how fools operated there.
Old English dancing in one room, Native American art in the next. Let's go back to Peg.
I'm back in the crafts area again with Stan Hill, a Mohawk Indian from Grand Island near Buffalo. He's an internationally known and an award-winning bone carver. Mr. Hill, is this a traditional Indian craft, and are you one of the few people who are carrying on the tradition?
It's traditional, but I am one of the few that are doing it at this time.
Why did you decide to do it? What made you carry on?
Well, it was strictly by accident. As you see there, I'm a structural steel iron worker for over 30 years. So this is something I've taken up only last 3.5 years.
What type of bone is this, and where do you find it?
It's mostly antlers, and I gather it from all over the country. I have to buy it, or people that have saved antlers from their hunting trips and no longer need them or want them. Those are what you see here.
And what are the themes? You're using traditional Indian themes. What did the eagle and the other symbols here mean to the Indians?
Well, you see a lot of eagles here. Now, the eagle is a sacred bird to the Iroquois. It's supposed to be the guardian of our Confederacy, guardian of our peace among the Iroquois, peace treaty. And like the rest on there is, you see designs of the Iroquois wampum belts.
And how did you learn the designs? Have these been handed down, or did you have to do research and find them out?
No research. It's something that was handed down.
Are other Indians taking this up? You mentioned that you're teaching this now.
Well, they're trying now to get it started throughout several Indian schools, but it's kind of slow starting.
How long does it take you to do a piece? Say one of the smaller pieces here. How long do you work on it?
Well, that's a favorite question, but I'm a full-time artist and I don't keep no time. What I'm saying is that I'll work on one piece until I'm satisfied with it, regardless of what the financial outcome might be, whether it's worth $2 or when I get to it's worth $500. So time has nothing to do with what I do.
Stan Hill, a Mohawk bone carver. And now to Dave.
Rick and Ellen Boots are wood carvers, and they ply their trade up at Blue Mountain Lake in the Adirondacks. I want to ask you, Rick, how does one become a wood carver? I mean, how do you become that kind of a craftsman?
Well, it's kind of in my family background. My dad was a woodworker, and I started doing my first work, about 20 years ago or so. It varies from different individuals. A friend of mine in Arizona went to Portugal for 3 years and apprenticed in a Portuguese carving guild, and that's how he learned.
Is it an art that we're losing? Is the kind of craft that isn't being passed along?
I would say that, with the exception of the past couple of years, yes. In the past few years, there's been a revival of interest in it. But the incredible thing is that in the space of a few generations, a lot of the old carving techniques from the masters have been lost. And a lot of techniques have just sort of faded into oblivion.
And you can make a living. You've made the decision to try to make a living at this for as long as you can, correct? Certainly. Is it difficult?
I think it takes a little creativity. I think you have to know your business, and I think you have to run it like a business and not lose sight of the fact that you enjoy doing it as an art as well.
Thank you very much, Rick. We've been talking with Rick Boots, who is a wood carver and has a shop at Blue Mountain Lake in New York State's Adirondacks. Now to Peg.
Lieutenant Governor Mary Ann Krupczak was honored by state craftsmen for her work in promoting state tourism and the state arts. Annie Rogers of the Rochester Folk Art Guild made the presentation.
On behalf of the Rochester Folk Art Guild in Middlesex, New York, and the craftsmen of New York State, I'd like to present you with this teapot as a token for the work that we feel you've done for New York State, and gratitude for that. And there are also some tea bowls to go with it. You may not be able to hold it all.
Thank you so much, Annie. I'm really just very grateful for this very generous gift. It's going to be on display on my crafts table in the office of Lieutenant Governor, where everyone can see the craftsmanship of New York artists. We're just thrilled at the numbers of people from the crafts of so many counties of New York who gathered under one roof to show the talents that New Yorkers are so capable of. And we thank you very much. This is very generous. Thank you.
And are you excited by the crowds in the collection?
Oh, Peg, I can't tell you. I'm just bursting. We put so much effort into assembling people from all over the state. Risa Siegel and other members of my staff and a few others who on weekends traveled the state just identifying the locations of the craftspeople. Brought representatives of the finest here in the concourse today for this, what I'm sure is going to be just the first fall festival. The gatherings are just incredible already. As we talk, it's not even mid-morning, and busloads are arriving, and I hope that by the end of the time, people will know the excellence of the artists of New York State and feel as proud as we are of their accomplishments.
Thank you very much, and congratulations. The group you heard at the opening of the program is called the Catskill Stompers. 7 musicians playing traditional Dixieland, and they really rocked the crowd.
Groups performed all day under threat of rain, and no one knew if the weather would hold for the climax of the day's entertainment, the gala performance that had been scheduled for the specially constructed outdoor stage at the plaza. At 4 o'clock, the crowd learned that the show would be moved to Albany's historic Palace Theater, several blocks away from the mall. The change in plans meant a change in the schedule of events. And the audience that arrived at the Palace was treated to performances by the Albany Symphony and the Lake George Opera.
Soloist Carol Farley of the Metropolitan Opera added a special treat for opera buffs in the crowd.
Miss Farley was accompanied by the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra, conducted by Andrei Kostelanets. They Raise the Roof was Tchaikovsky's 1812 overture.
And then there was a surprise song burst by Albany's newest performing duo.
The uncertain weather conditions caused some frantic rescheduling, but when the weather held, the gala moved, almost intact, for a repeat performance for the much larger crowd that had braved the weather and remained on the plaza.
Collecting things, give me my rose and my glove. Sweetheart, they're suggesting things. People will say we're in love.
And next on the impromptu program, the 300-member Festival of Praise Chorus.
And there was still more, and the evening audience went wild for the Chuck Davis Dance Company. Finally, the headliner of the gala, comedian, TV star, and crowd favorite, Danny Thomas.
Thank you very much. It's certainly a privilege to be here in this great capital of the greatest state in the Union, the state of New York. And although we have had our problems before, I promise you, if you will elect me governor of this state, we'll be further in the hole. I wouldn't take that job if they gave it to me for double pay. I am here because without New York, and this is the gospel truth, without New York, there never would have been a Danny Thomas. You see, I came from a neighborhood nightclub from Chicago where I worked for 3 years, and they said, "Kid, we think you can make it in New York," and I was so scared because like it says in the song, if you make it there, you'll make it anywhere.
When the gala ended, as darkness fell, the lights of the plaza were dimmed for a special fireworks display. The fireworks, bright candles for the thousands celebrating fall in New York State. By nightfall, a crowd estimated at between 50 to 100,000 persons had had their fill of New York State food and beverage, purchased crafts, and strolled through the Mammoth complex. Additionally, the crowd had become more familiar with state government. Many agencies had exhibits. They'd also become more familiar with the plaza itself, which has remained a marble-topped curiosity to many state residents.
While the exhibits and booths were gone in a day, the artwork will remain open to the public until November 27th. Additionally, the State Education Department is using the exhibit as a teaching tool. Special tours and programs have been planned for school groups from throughout New York. Was it worth it? Governor Carey thought so. He mentioned the possibility of future festivals. State taxpayers will have to decide for themselves. The legislature originally appropriated $200,000 for the event. Some estimates indicate that the total cost might be twice that amount and more. But for the people who attended, it was clearly a fine day to enjoy themselves and a good chance to declare, "I love New York."
Inside Albany was produced by WMHT Schenectady, which is solely responsible for its content, and was made possible by